So welcome everybody. Great to see a bunch of regulars, a bunch of new people. So that's always fun. We have Miggs with us today. Miggs, I don't know if you want any kind of specific introduction about yourself.
I have a little bit in the presentation, so that worked
Perfect.
just fine.
Cool. I will turn it over to you.
All right, so let me quickly share here. So good morning, everybody. Thanks to Chris for actually inviting me here. I'm actually kind of excited about doing this. This is the first time that I've given this talk in English. It was previously done in Japanese as a part of last year's Scrum Fest Osaka, which had a gaming theme. One of the coolest things about the pandemic for me as someone who's studied Japanese language for a long time is I've actually been able to get a lot more involved without hopping on a plane, spending a lot of time, which don't get me wrong, I actually love going there and wish I could do so now, but the borders are closed. But to be able to do that on a regular basis is challenging. Now it's a lot easier. Scrum Fest Osaka actually had a gaming theme, like Agile in gaming and how to do things with games last year. So I submitted this particular talk as a way to kind of introduce the concept in kind of a different way. This sort of idea hit me as I was playing one of the games that I usually do play, and it occurred to me, and during a more difficult battle than usual, that the analogy for a Scrum team and some of the Agile principles actually works with the game that I was playing. So that was kind of the seed for this talk that kind of grew into a little bit more. So without further ado, let's go. I hope that my internet is fine. I've been having strange issues for the last day and a half. So if you lose me, I'll try to get back in as soon as I can. I have Google Slides run to offline mode, so we shouldn't run into any issues there. Let's all send good vibes that we don't have demo gremlins today. So let me move on here. So this is me. I'm a lead engineer or lead engineering coach at Target. I'm actually on Chris Diller's team. Super awesome team, super awesome group. It's a lot of fun. I've spent the last almost 4 years there. This is my Twitter handle. If anybody's interested, that'll come up at the end as well. A little bit more about me. So without spending too much time on this, I've had about 20 years in the industry. Most of that time has been as a software engineer of various levels, first as an individual contributor, then as a team lead. 8 of those years have been in e-commerce between Best Buy and Target. And the last 3 and change has been as an engineering coach on the Dojo, well now Rise team at Target. I'm also co-founder of Entropy Games, small indie studio. We launch products internationally on console and PC platforms. So we did have a publishing partner in Japan for one of our games, which was a lot of fun. Shout outs to other indie devs on the call. I see you. Welcome and awesome to see you. Volunteer Japanese English interpreter for the Bloomington Izumi Sister City. I've done interpretation for school tours, for government officials who come to visit, those kinds of things before COVID. I'm hoping that we can do that again after all of this ends. And then my Ikigai, which there's a lot of different interpretations of that. Basically, I guess the best way to put it in English is kind of reason for getting up in the morning, or small things that you enjoy doing, or small things that give your life meaning. For me, I can sum up my purpose or my value as connection and learning through technology. So you're going to see that a lot throughout the presentation today. So let's talk a little bit about sort of why a gaming oriented presentation and kind of showed up here. So as a software engineering coach, my job is to basically introduce or reinforce software development concepts and technologies to folks of all kinds of different backgrounds. I've worked with everything from folks right out of college all the way to lead and principal level engineers. And a big part of that job is basically diluting technical concepts down into something that anybody of any level can understand. And as a part of that, a lot of times what I've found helpful is real world analogies, or analogies that the target audience can really relate to in a different way. So for me, at least for the kinds of audiences where it makes sense, gaming is a huge part of my life, and it has been. You can see back on the previous slide my game room on the far right, my geeky Peloton DDR pad, and my arcade and everything else. This is a huge part of me. So when I do analogies and I see an audience that is super okay with games as an analogy space versus sports or other things, I certainly love to do it. So the easiest way to dilute some of those concepts into real world analogies is through gaming for me. And it's not just tech, right? So software engineering, coaching, more often than not, we partner a lot with Agile product coaches as well, because a lot of times when somebody comes to you with a technical problem, it's really a people problem in disguise. So again, simple analogies work best for some of these things. And also, just like when monsters randomly appear in RPG games, so problems in software development can show up anytime. So before we get into the Agile and Scrum component, let's talk a little bit about games, and in particular, the trinity of roles that players play in kind of a popular, massively multiplayer online RPG type of game, where basically everybody goes into a virtual world and works together to battle monsters, complete quests, and so on. Let's talk a little bit about that. Here you've got your team. The team is composed of 3 different role types. The first one I'm going to talk a little bit about is the shield here, which actually represents a class called Tank. Tank is generally the leader of the party. They will lead the party through the dungeon. They'll be the one that confront the boss. And they're basically a big, meaty, armor-wearing, distracting shield that basically gets in front of the monster and stays there and stops that monster from attacking anybody else. Because unfortunately, for the other members of this party, the only one who can sustain any kind of attack from a monster for any length of time is the tank, because they're the only ones that can wear the armor. They're the only ones that can interface with the monster without causing a lot of problems. So the tank will provoke the monster, and the monster will get mad and start attacking the tank. And so they're the ones that get in front of everything and make sure that the other roles can do their jobs. Then we have, behind the tank, we've got a group of spellcasters or sword fighters that are nimble, but they can't wear heavy armor and they can't sustain a lot of attack. But one thing they can do is throw lots of fire, lightning, ice, massive slashing attacks and other things right in front of the monster or on the monster to basically hurt them a whole lot. Unfortunately, like I said, they can't sustain a lot of damage, so they need the tank to help. These are called the DPS, or damage per second classes. And their job is basically to throw lots of sparkly things at the monster and whittle down that life bar so that they can move on to the next goal. And finally, we have, and you can probably guess from the color and the symbol here, the healer class. And the healer class is actually the most important role, I would say, in terms of keeping things going. So if you do have something go sideways, the one that you don't want to fall down is the healer, because if the healer is down, everything goes completely off the rails. The monster's chasing around the DPS, the tank can't distract effectively because they're too busy trying to get their HP back. They're basically just, everything's a big mess. Monsters chasing everybody around, nothing happens. So the healer allows the rest of the party to complete their roles efficiently and the most effective way possible by keeping them in fighting form. So those are the 3 kind of character role archetypes for a lot of modern, massively multiplayer online RPGs. These are common in Final Fantasy. This is what my shirt's from, but there's also, small types of archetypes and things like Destiny, or a lot of the games as a service kind of things that are currently active now. So if you hear the terms tank, DPS, or healer, that's kind of where these things come from. But I didn't come here just to talk about games, right? So this guy's a little bit annoyed with me. Why in the world are you explaining MMORPG character roles? This is an Agile meetup. And to that monster, I would say that Scrum teams are actually similar in terms of the trinity of roles. So in terms of your tank for your Scrum team, you have your product owner. The product owner chooses the monster or the backlog item that the party will battle to complete. They're responsible for distracting and defending the team from any kind of threat that could come in sideways. Now, during a game, obviously, when you're fighting one monster, another monster could decide to come in, just like a a surprise requirement or leadership order would come in and basically say, hey, you need to complete this now. So somebody's got to get in front of that and make sure that the rest of the team is kind of protected so they can do their thing. And also sort of serve as a guidepost or a North Star for the team. So the tank navigates people through dungeons. They're the ones to engage the boss. They're usually the ones to understand the strategy. So if there are newer people on the team, usually the tank will be the one to explain, okay, when we're fighting this boss, make sure you don't stand in the flashy area because the flashy area is going to start lighting up with explosions. Go over here instead. So that's generally the tank's job. So in the same way, the product owner serves as sort of the North Star for a Scrum team. Similarly, we have for the DPS role, we have the development team. So their most important job is to defeat the monsters, basically that the product owner engages. So basically completing the work that the product owner prioritizes. They also are responsible for making the plan to how to go about winning the battle, how to go about completing the work. They decide when the work is done, when to shift things over. So their whole domain is making sure that monster's HP bar drops as much as possible, as quickly as possible, so the team can move on to the next goal. And finally, we have the healer, which again, remember I said that that is one of the most important roles, but it's also, in terms of this analogy, one of the squishiest in terms of, because they're so valuable, but yet it's not necessarily as visible compared to the other folks on the team. But I will say that there are classes in RPGs or classes in games. There are tanks that have healing capability, and there are also DPS classes that have healing capabilities. My class in Final Fantasy 14, if folks are familiar with that game, is a red mage. A red mage can actually heal and resurrect people, but if I'm not doing damage, then I'm not able to complete as much, I'm not able to contribute as much as I would be able to. And for certain battles, that would be really difficult. So similarly, if you don't have a dedicated Scrum Master, a dedicated resource to these kinds of tasks, so keeping the team fighting fit by eliminating or minimizing blockers, acting as a coach and mentor for all team members, regardless of role, and powering up team members in Agile and Scrum knowledge. If that falls to either the product owner or the DPS, or the product owner or the development team, the team can't work as effectively. And you will run into situations, like I mentioned before, where everything kind of runs around willy-nilly and there's not a lot of, there's not a single direction. Things kind of sort of go off the rails. So all three of these roles are very important. And in the same way as they are for games, Scrum teams serve a very similar purpose here. Now moving away from Scrum and into more of the Agile space and the 12 Agile principles, some people on this call might be familiar with this project, so, but not everybody is, of course. So this is a project that actually came about from the team that I'm on before the pandemic. So twice a year, Target has a hackathon called Code Red, where in the past, everybody would get together in person in one of the buildings downtown for a couple of days and basically hack on whatever they want. And it's kind of a competition, but we as a team never really participate in the competition aspect. We just want to get together and build stuff. And a couple of folks on the team got together and started talking about, wouldn't it be fun to build a video game that teaches folks about Agile? And at the time, we actually had somebody on our team that was a college professor and somebody who had literally written the book on how to build a simple Pokemon style game in Unity. So this made for a very interesting kind of project that would build in a lot of creativity, but also allow folks from the software engineering space and the Agile product space to kind of work together. So this allowed the Agile product folks to participate in the hackathon in a more direct way, which was a lot of fun for the team. So again, the team was made up of both software engineering coaches and Agile product coaches. The goal of the game is to learn the 12 Agile principles. So you would walk around on a top-down view and you would get into random battles with bad working practices. And you would defeat these bad working practices with one of the 12 Agile principles. You'd be able to select the principle which you would attack the bad work practice. And I'll show you some examples of that on the next slide. If you attack with the correct Agile principle, you would do a bunch of damage and you would end up basically winning the fight. We wanted to do some collectability aspect too, but we kind of ran out of time there. So let's be some Agilon. Let's look at some of these bad working practices in detail. So we got the Velocigrapher. So these folks love graphs and statistics above all else because lots of data means lots of work is getting done, right? So this Agimon's weakness is actually Agile principle number 7. So delivered outcomes is the primary measure of progress. So if you want to fight a Velocigrapher, toss number 7 at them. Then we have the silo. This one thrives on working alone and will go offline and hide in a meeting room to crunch out code. And again, keep in mind, this was before COVID where everybody was remote. So this one's weakness is actually number 4, Agile principle number 4, which is business people and developers work together daily. So do not silo yourself. And finally, we have the outlooking. This one will only communicate through email as opposed to face-to-face. So obviously, for this particular point, the weakness is going to be Agile principle number 6, which is convey information through face-to-face conversations. So this is not all of the ones that are put in the game, but this is one of them. These are 3 of my favorites that were a lot of fun to kind of work through and sort of decide on what what the different monsters were, what kinds of things that they would do, and how the weaknesses played out. So it ended up being quite a bit of fun. We still have the demo. It's been a long time since anybody on our team has worked on it, but I still have that locally, and I've played around with it a little bit, but I haven't had a lot of time recently to kind of dive into it. But it's been fun to kind of look at that and sort of see the different directions where it could go if we had a little bit more time to look into it. So that was very fun to do, and I think one of the biggest outcomes versus outputs from that was finding new ways to have the 2 sides of our team, the Agile product side and the software engineering side, kind of combine forces. And I think we can do that a little bit more in terms of some of the value that we can provide to teams in the future. And a couple more things, or a few pointers that I've found for the kinds of things that we sort of go through in regards to interactive experiences and facilitation and teaching and those kinds of things in terms of gaming. So one thing that we've discovered over time as this pandemic has gone on and on and on is that we have to kind of change the way that we approach how we facilitate, how we present, how we interact with our audiences. And one thing that was discovered a long, long time ago is that during passive presentations, attendees can only maintain focus or attention for approximately 7 to 10 minutes at a time. So if you're up here sitting here talking and talking and talking and talking and talking without any kind of break or any kind of interaction, and there is an interaction coming up, it becomes difficult for folks to kind of stay engaged. So if you can, try to have some sort of interaction at least once every 10 minutes in a retrospective, in a meeting, in some kind of facilitation engagement. The more you can involve the participants, the better off you're going to be. People nowadays have a little bit more of an aversion to breakout rooms than they did during the initial stages of the pandemic. At least we've found that folks are kind of like, oh God, now I have to pay attention, kind of just sort of drain out. So there are other ways of kind of addressing that without dragging everybody into a breakout and having to deal with timers and getting everybody back and people accidentally leaving the meeting and so on, those kinds of things that come up. So some examples. So there are the breakout activities, which folks do often for discussions or for interactive experiences or games. There are also Zoom polls, which you can set up a little bit before each call, or you can use an outside tool. For me, I've actually found that for my engagements, there's a Jackbox-like tool called CrowdPer, which has a very nice sort of free version that lets you have about 20 people connect to more or less a Jackbox game that you can design, that folks can put in, basically go to a URL on their phone and they can play a trivia game just like in Jackbox. So that's been a lot of fun for some of our engagements around testing, around onboarding, and some of those things. So it's been a lot of fun to do that. Other options are just some open conversation, some Q&A, those kinds of things. Basically just stop the wave of overflow wave of communication. And the reference for this is actually from 2012. So we've known this for a while, but it's been something that's very, very important, especially now in the pandemic, to introduce interaction and things like gaming concepts as much as possible when you're going through and actually, doing your work as a facilitator, as a coach, as a mentor, as an Agile practitioner. So let's try this. I'm sorry for the Japanese. So for folks who haven't done Zoom annotations yet, this is going to be a fun exercise. So next to the green bar that says, well, right now it says moon runes on the screen, but basically you are now seeing Michael Maglasio's screen. Next to that, there should be a drop down. If you click that drop down, one of the bottom options, it's not going to be the last one, but it's going to be pretty close. It's going to say annotations, not commentos, get it, but annotations. So if you could go out and do that, and then another toolbar will open up and you'll be able to actually draw on my screen if the Zoom call has been enabled to allow this. So go ahead and do that. Sign in. Awesome. So we found this is actually a lot of fun. We've used it in sort of different ways throughout our trainings and our offerings at Target to involve people. We've allowed them to kind of complete activities together as a group, sort of using either matching exercises or, kind of team icebreaker kinds of activities with this. And it's been a lot of fun and a little bit quirky and different and a way to, it doesn't really simulate a whiteboard perfectly, but it allows folks to kind of interact on the same space without messing with a gigantic UI, sort of like a concept board or even idea boards or one of those things. It's just very natural, I guess you could say. You don't have to fight with the UI so much. You just click on the screen and draw. So I found that to be one of the most interesting, cool aspects of Zoom. And interestingly enough, when I gave this talk in Osaka, at Osaka, a lot of folks had never seen this or never used this, even though they've been on Zoom for around like a year at the time. So that was a lot of fun to kind of introduce that aspect of things. Cool. And if anybody wants to capture that as a screenshot for promotional purposes, I'll leave this up for another minute or so. And I'll grab it too, just in case. Okay. And then, like a big jerk, I can go and destroy all that drawing. But it is a great way to involve folks in kind of a natural way that's a little bit different than sending folks out to a brand new tool or something that's, a little bit different that they'll then have cognitive load to have to deal with. Oh gosh, how do I create a sticky? How do I move things around? I can't select the stamp to drag it to my choice, my vote. I'm just whatever. So this is a great way to just naturally engage or interact. And you could develop games with this too. I mean, you could play tic-tac-toe if you really wanted to with this kind of thing. So anyway, so that's really what I have for today. I'd like to open it up for questions, comments, or concerns. My contact info is right here. I'm very much interested in connecting with anybody and everybody, especially when it comes to gaming or Japan or Agile or any of the above, all of the above, some combination of the above. So I'm very happy to have shared this with everybody today. Hopefully they found it a little bit helpful or at least interesting. And yeah, let's open it up.
You're not going to share the demo with us?
You know,
Mostly teasing, but
you know, I should have thought of that because I just haven't ran it in a while. Let me see if I can actually. This is going to be interesting. We'll put it that way. Let me see if I can do it. Let me see if I can do it. We're going to try. We're going to try because we have time. Why not?
no pressure.
While he's figuring that out, I learned today that apparently I'm a warlock class, which I didn't expect. Destiny.
Oh, okay. I've only played actually Destiny 1. I've never tried Destiny 2. I did get Elden Ring, and I'm worried sick because I'm not a Soulsborne guy, and I don't know how that's going to go. Probably not well. We'll see.
I would love a Twitter series about your experience as a non-Souls player playing Elden Ring.
I was thinking about doing that actually.
Died again.
So feel free to follow for my angsty, annoyed experiences. This will take a minute to load, but I think it'll actually work. So far, so good. Let's see. Come on, Unity. Come on, Unity. Let's see. Oh, wait. Duh. Okay. Let's see if this. Yep, here we go. Okay. Come on. There we go. All right, we got a complexiter here. What principle would handle something that's a little bit complex? Any thoughts?
Simplicity or the art of maximizing the work not done is, I can't remember the last couple words.
I think that's right. What number is that?
I don't
10.
know.
Number 10? We got him. That was the right answer. Let's try one more. Let's see if we can get a different one. Oh, we got a historiador. The comments go too fast. I think this has to do with something like too much focus on the past or too much legacy stuff. So thoughts? I have my cheat sheet here. Let's see.
He bought the guide.
I think it's number 12.
Retrospectives?
Oh, nope. Ooh, okay. Let's see. Early? Satisfy the customer early? Nope. Constant pace indefinitely.
Try 9.
9? Let's see. Nope.
Oh, dang.
Maybe
You took a little bit of help there.
3, delivering working software frequently.
Yeah, we got it. That I think
Nice.
was the right one. I'd have to see. I need to increase the timing here. Like, remember, this is a hackathon project. And if you know anything about hackathon projects, they're a little bit. Actually, Osaka wanted this, and I'm like, this was something that we did at work. I don't want to like put this publicly, but what was that? Is that the Outlook in?
This is Outlook, and
All right, so we know what that is. I believe it's number 6. Yep. Bam. All right. That should have hit him pretty good. But I guess something's going on here. Oh, yeah, it was actually number 1. Satisfy the customer through early continuous delivery. So something, oh, here we go, skeptical. So
these names are great.
so Dave, Klaus, who I believe is sometimes an attendee of these sessions, actually came up with quite a few of these names. So he was a huge part of this project when we were working on it. Skeptic.
I thought this was the Velociraptor.
We used the different sprites for the same thing. We didn't have a lot of sprites. So let's see. I'm not sure which one this is. So yeah, there's a hint that happens when it starts up real quick, but I don't want to debug this right now to figure out how to increase the time limit. I'm sure I could find it. It's probably in BattleLogic, but I'm not going to sit here and do a 13-person pair programming, mob programming, I guess, session or more emotional support coding for trying to get this through. But I think everybody has the idea of what kind of thing this is and potentially what it could be if we had more time to sort of work on it as something that would allow folks to kind of understand the 12 Agile principles in a little bit better way and potentially remember the numbers, because I never remember the numbers. I remember the principles themselves, but never what number they are. So that's another thing that we could potentially do.
Thanks for sharing that with us. I was mostly just giving you grief, but it's fun to see.
Yeah, no worries.
The overview there is an animated version of Target's Northern Campus in Brooklyn Park too, if anyone doesn't recognize it.
Didn't pick up on the reference.
The hospital that was on there is also the location of Target's dojo, at least at the time.
Yes.
I see what you did there.
Any other questions? Otherwise, folks can have some time back, or I don't know how these meetings usually go. So,
yeah, Miggs, thanks so much for coming. It was great to hear what you had to share and read all that. People can definitely hang out if they've got anything else for Miggs. Otherwise, we will see you next month. So thanks again, Miggs. Hope to see you again.
Absolutely. This was fun.
At another one.
And now I know that our demo still works.
I was going to say that's pretty good for a hackathon game demo thing.
Again, we had Ashley. So, I mean, that helped. She literally wrote the book on it. So now she's actually back in game dev, but when she was working with us, Ashley Godbold, she actually led the team building that out. So that was a lot of fun.
This would be a fun activity of just like having a group of people design their own monsters and name them accordingly, and then link it back to the principles. Or even if they're like, okay, what are the biggest problems that we see in our development team right now?
Yeah, because once you have that group or that scaffolding that we've got, we could very easily put other stuff in there. It's very straightforward. So yeah, that would be a fun thing to do. Something a little different.
Ed, I think you're onto something there.
Uh-oh,
Yeah,
Dan's gonna
like
be setting up meetings with me now. I gotta run and hide.
Run
No,
away.
I'd be happy to do that. So for sure, like folks who are on the team or even, whatever, just let me know.
Yeah. I think it's interesting that the metaphor of the roles lends itself nicely to explaining why each role is so important. And when teams are like, we don't have a scrum master, we have a group of developers and we rotate the role.
Mhm.
Like, okay, you have a group of DPS players who are all rotating, healing, and jumping out of the fight to heal. Do you see
Yep.
how this could be difficult? I think it does a really nice job of painting the pictures for those different patterns.
Or then you're like, oh, the Scrum Master just jumps in and heals with like writing more code.
Jumps
That's
in.
how I heal,
Yes,
right?
Yeah,
A DPS Scrum Master would actually be, wow, that would be interesting. And actually that does, so in games that does happen sometimes. So healers do not only heal, they do have damage, but they don't have a lot of damage and they can basically die in 2 hits. So they're more, a lot of times debuffers. So basically they'll make the enemy weaker, or they'll make your character stronger. So, but yeah, that does happen too, I suppose. I don't know how many Scrum Masters hop in the code, but I'm sure it's happened before.
or even multiple teams for one Scrum Master, having a healer who's trying to buff 5 parties at once. Yeah.
Yeah, yep, that happens in alliances in games too. So
Yeah.
Yep. Or the healers are down, like just they're down, so there's just one that's up, and they're just trying to resurrect everybody and whatever. That's when the DPS tends to step in and heal more often than not, which is true of this analogy as well.
Yeah.
Just thinking about the getting fixated, not like in a good way, fixated and summoning some change initiative. So it's almost like a familiar that you're summoning.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't think about that.
But they're like, why are you summoning this, this whatever wolf?
Yeah.
It barks. It's scary.
It'll help, I promise. Just wait. It's okay.
Just watch the little pup.
Awesome. I've got my little ghost here on my desk.
Yeah, there we go. So
I'm a
first
hunter.
impressions of Elden Ring after 1 death has been literally, I can actually control my character now, and I'm planning on being a ranged caster. So I'm gonna be squishy the whole time, but at least I wanted to get up close and personal with the gigantic, angry, rotting trolls. So we'll see how that goes. We'll see how long I last. My record is like 1 hour in a Soulsborne, which was Bloodborne, and the second one was Demon Souls. I made it to the first. I beat the first boss, the Phalanx, but the rest of the time I pick up every single FromSoft game. I bounce off of it immediately. The one that I'm kind of mad about is actually Neo 2, which is Team Ninja. They made a Souls-like called Neo 2, which is set in Japan. I'm like, this is gonna be so cool. This is gonna be so cool. I get in there and I die in the first 5 minutes. Just Soulsborne. So yeah, I'm hoping I stick with Elden Ring. I'd like to actually understand why everybody loves these games so much, but I just have such limited time that I don't know whether or not I'm gonna stick with it. So we'll see. Follow my Twitter account if you want to see shenanigans. I'll put it in.
I love the iterative approach to Soulsborne games. how to fail till you win.
Oh, that's what's driving me away from that game. I seriously contemplated getting it last week, and it's like time, right? And then B, it's like I play games for enjoyment, not to get ticked off until I do well. But that's a very good point, the iterative.
Yeah, the open world helps, I've heard. So basically you don't have to just you're not boxed into this small environment where it's basically just a few enemies and the boss. You don't have to find any bosses if you don't want to. You can hang out and just grind. You can just hang out and go find stuff, which doesn't mean it's fair. They still throw a bunch of garbage at you, but at least like you have choice. So that's why I feel like that, and the controls, like I don't feel like I'm moving a tank at this point. I feel like I'm actually like able to dodge and able to move, and it feels okay, which is not something that I've felt with any other Soulsborne game. So it'll be interesting. We'll see. I think I'll last more than an hour, but I'm probably not going to end up beating it. The first time I lose just a bunch of stuff, I'm going to be so salty that I'll just end up dropping it. Now featuring a helpful sprint named Master Scrum, who will meet with you during the loading screen and ask insightful questions on how it went that time. Nice.
How to
Dan.
ruin every game. Picture Clippy, but just worse.
Ooh.
I noticed you just switched programs like through 6 different programs in the last 15 minutes. Would you like me to talk to you about work in progress?
Oh God. Oh God.
I've got a new coaching approach, everyone. So I noticed you're still on Outlook. Let's talk about Principle 5.
The part of that, like with Slackbot, I've been in Slack communities where they have the bot just like auto respond to a lot of things to help like redirect behavior and even language. So like anytime you're like, hey, you guys, blah, 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 it had an auto response for, do you realize that who you're not including by just saying guys, you guys?
Ooh.
And I'm like, oh, yeah, good call out.
I'm
And
from
so,
Chicago. I have to check myself every time because like growing up, so I literally, if I do it, I will immediately correct myself because it's just the way that we talked. So it's hard for me to switch. So I as a coach, I've made a very deliberate effort to not do that. So totally get it. Totally get it.
it's good. I mean, it's instant feedback, and it's not like it's, you just need to work on the language of the bot, but then I really like it. The ability to just redirect language.
Oh yeah. That's awesome.
Hero Slackbot.
The nice thing about it being a bot calling people out is there's no, what are you gonna argue with Slackbot?
There you go. Yeah, exactly.
Challenge accepted.
Yeah, I was gonna say, don't try me. I'll argue with bot.
Can't have a face-to-face conversation with a bot. Go away.
If only there was a Slack bot that would get people to reply in threads instead of starting a new one each time.
Have you created a ticket in Jira about this?
Jeez.
No, boo.
Ooh.
Oh, Chris, I'm also a fan of YALL. I love YALL.
It's a pretty solid one. I'm pretty convinced. It doesn't come out very natural in my, Midwestern Northern accent, but I still use it once in a while.
Y'all
Put an
and
S
all
or
y'all.
multiple S's.
Oh yeah.
All y'all.
Y'all's is.
Y'all's is.
Just adds to the fun, really. My family's from Texas, so we get a lot of y'alls.
I can pick up on y'all. I lived in Texas for 3 years as a kid, so I think I can adapt to
Yeah, you got to keep the Texan closed like mouth though. The Midwestern like big y'all, it makes it really uncomfortable. Like really subtle, like y'all. You can barely open your mouth.
What did you learn at the meetup this morning? Y'all.
We did it.
Ironically, Osaka has one of the thickest dialects in Japanese language. So just like with the Southern dialect in the States, they change a lot of words, or there are specific words. And the original version of that talk had a bunch of the Osaka specific terminology there, which they all found hilarious because it would be like somebody from from another country coming in here and talking about YALL. So like, just like, whoa, you know that? Yikes, that's awesome. So that was a lot of that was interesting too. And the Bloomington Izumi. So Izumi is a city literally right outside of Osaka. So my host family, when I was there for a student delegation, I was a chaperone there. My host family, my host dad had the thickest Osaka accent to where, like, if he tried to call me on the phone, I couldn't understand him, but I could understand him face to face. So linguistics are fun. And over time they change too.
Yeah, we were hoping to hear this talk again now in Japanese since we had time. So
I can do it.
That's
I don't
really
know
where
what
we're
you
hanging
get out
out.
of it, but I can do it.
I had a friend at college who was from Japan. He and his wife, he eventually brought his wife over as well. We were sitting in the computer lab one night, and we had gotten done with an assignment, and so I looked up some Japanese phrases because I knew no Japanese, and so I said a couple words to confirm with him that I had found a decent site, and then I found this one phrase. And so I was like, I don't know how to say this, so I'm gonna butcher it. So then I said it to him, and he just starts like laughing so hard, like scream laughing. It was just entirely hilarious. And I'm like, what did I do? What did I do? And so the phrase was, "I will tear you in half," was the phrase. But he said you said it like you're a girl.
Yeah.
And then he leans over and tells his wife, and then she starts laughing hysterically too.
So as a Japanese language learner, I can relate because all of my teachers, for the most part, have been women. So I got a lot of crap from my my host dad, and had to get a crash course in what are the actual words we're supposed to use based on that. So yeah, big foreign guy speaking like a girl in Japan did not necessarily get it. I was like, what are you saying? Like, no, you're supposed to say that.
I get that feedback too in Korea. My wife is my only language partner, so every time I go there, they're like, "You have a very feminine accent." I'm like, "Thank you. That makes sense. I'm glad I'm learning."
Sure.
I have a question if no one else has anything. Just curious, since you've been doing all this work with the Agile community, especially in Japan, like, how have you seen different challenges or different ways Agile is adopted in more of a high context society?
Yeah, that's actually a great question. I wish I would have actually put some slides in here on this. So they're behind us, and they're behind us a lot. And the reason why is because things are very, very hierarchical there, even more so than they are in the States. So what you see is a lot of times it's an all or none issue, where either they're going Agile or they're not going Agile. There's none of this ability to actually step in and be like, okay, let's take this one team and have a little experiment to see, like, how things are working. There's not a lot of maneuverability in the corporate culture there to actually encourage that. They have consultants now. They have like basically big voices for the community out there to try to get these things going. But a lot of times what I've found, in at least the conferences that I've been a part of, it's a very small group, and they're still reliant on folks like us, like people who can bridge build, to kind of share that knowledge and try to provide new insights or new ways of kind of piercing through that hierarchy to figure out ways of being able to introduce those concepts in a way that doesn't break the chain. So there are leaders in the space that are adopting it. I would say they're not most westernized, but definitely most Silicon Valley-esque. So if you've heard of Rakuten, which is like the Japanese Amazon, they're very progressive when it comes to their development practices and things. Like a lot of speakers in that conference or in those conferences come from Octane. Line is another one. So the messaging app Line, if you've heard about that, that is another basically their Facebook Messenger and WhatsApp and those things. Basically, everybody uses it. They also have a very Silicon Valley-esque culture, and they do a lot of things that that we do. But there's still challenges, I would say, and we have challenges on our side too, right? Like there are definitely people who view Agile as an all or none thing, not a mindset, but an actual, set of rigid practices that need to happen in order to change the process. And really, and maybe I'm speaking out of turn as an engineer when I say this, but when I coach, a lot of times I introduce it as more of like a toolbox or more of a house rules type situation where teams are going to find what works best for them and they're going to go with that. All we can do is kind of provide the insight and the toolbox, and it's up to them to figure out how to use it. So and there are definitely sides to that camp, and over there they definitely see things as more of an all or none, which is I think a process that's changing over time. But the high contextness definitely relates to that, because as things kind of move down the chain, folks are more likely to go along with the inertia than to kind of break the mold. So that tends to be a little bit of a challenge.
Yeah, I reflect on like what you said about hierarchical kind of organizational structures and how hard or how challenging a lot of agile mindsets, and even like we'll take Scrum as an example with relatively 3 roles, and trying to fit that into a hierarchical system is really difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd be curious to see a team like from there who's done that successfully, and like what were the challenges for even just getting leadership to be like, yeah, today you're a developer.
I could actually connect you with someone who consults on a regular basis,
cool.
and I can give you their contact info. They're Japanese, or they're English fluent. They do a lot of translations of Agile books and stuff for Japan. They are a great resource for, they'd probably be able to help you with that for sure.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Otherwise, I think we're probably just about there. And I think we have, or I have something at 9. Yep. Architecture.
I'm gonna have to jump.
Well, thank you, everybody.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Great.
Thanks.
Thanks,
This is
Somebody
awesome.
got
Night.
Have a good month.
Yamata. Bye.
Be well.